Once upon a time, there lived a doctor whose single decision ended the life of someone who could have stopped the tragedy that was about to enter her own house. Her name was Dr. R.A., and she was a smart and hardworking doctor. Dr. R.A. would walk through the woods of a hospital like a soldier, correcting nurses, checking charts, and saving the lives that she swore to protect. But deep inside, she had one fear that she never admitted: the fear of being tested on the very thing that she refused to bend on. One night, whilst on night's duty, Dr. R.A. admitted a patient who fell from the second floor of an uncompleted building. No one knew who he was, as some strangers found him unconscious and rushed him to the hospital. Dr. R.A. was the only doctor on duty. She admitted him immediately and did everything possible to resuscitate him. But the man had lost too much blood and needed an urgent blood transfusion. Dr. R.A. stepped back because her fate did not allow for such procedures to be conducted. In her denomination, blood transfusion was a big sin. They thought that blood is secure and that once another person's blood enters your body, it pollutes the spirit forever. Dr. ICA believed this with all of her heart and was blatantly against any form of blood transfusion. Now here she was faced with a man who was unconscious and dying. There was no family member available to move him to another facility, and Dr. R.A. refused to proceed with the transfusion, pending when another doctor arrives to approve of it. She sat in her office feeling justified as a nurse rushed in to inform her that the patient's blood level was now crashing. The monitors began to beep as another nurse barged into the office in panic. "Doctor, the man does not have much time left. Permit us to give him some blood," she said to Dr. R.A., who informed her that she could not authorize a transfusion because of her religious beliefs. "How do you expect me to commit a sin to save his life?" she said to the nurse, who stood there frozen, unsure of what to say. The nurse looked at the clock as quiet desperation filled her eyes. "Doctor, he will die," she whispered, but Dr. R.A. closed her eyes and lowered her head. "We will wait," she replied firmly as she convinced herself that she was standing for what was right. Minutes stretched into what felt like years, and the beeping of the monitor slowly turned into a long, haunting sound that filled the entire ward. By the time another doctor arrived, the man had already slept beyond the reach of medicine. The ward fell silent, and Dr. Ripa sat alone in her office, convincing herself that she had done the right thing. Days turned into weeks, and the hospital buzzed with gossip. Some nurses avoided her completely, whilst others argued that fate should never stand in the way of saving her life. His family laid her head of his death as they stormed the hospital, drawing so much attention to Dr. R.A., who was labeled a murderer for not saving his life. Social media boasted as people could not understand why a doctor would refuse to administer blood to their patient, especially when the patient does not share a similar religious beliefs with them. Some even called for her license to be revoked, as they found it hard to understand how a doctor would deliberately refuse to save the life that she swore to save. Many people called for the hospital to be boycotted to avoid such from ever happening again, and the hospital, in a bid to protect its reputation, called for the immediate suspension of Dr. R.A., pending an investigation. The news hit her like a wave. One moment she was a respected doctor walking confidently through the words, and the next she was sitting at home staring at the walls that suddenly felt too close. Soon the matter moved to court, as the family of the deceased man demanded justice, and the country watched closely. The courtroom was filled beyond capacity. Journalists sat with their cameras ready. Nurses whispered quietly at the back, and members of R.A.'s religious community gathered with folded hands, praying silently. Dr. R.A. sat alone in the witness box, her white coat replaced with a plain dress that made her look smaller than she truly was. The judge listened carefully as the lawyers argued. One lawyer stood and spoke loudly. "A doctor took an oath to preserve life," he said, "and yet she allowed a man to die because of her personal beliefs." Murmurs filled the courtroom. Then Rick Sawyer rose slowly and began to speak. "My lord," he began calmly, "this is not a simple case of negligence. This is a conflict of rights. The Constitution protects a citizen's right to freedom of religion, and it also expects a doctor to save lives." Dr. R.A. stood at the intersection of two duties that contradicted each other. The courtroom fell silent as the judge adjusted his glasses and leaned forward. "So, you are telling this court," he said slowly, that the accused was forced to choose between her conscience and her profession. "Yes, my lord," the lawyer replied. She did not act of hatred or greed. She acted from a deeply held belief, even if the consequences were tragic. The victim's widow sat quietly in the front row, her eyes fixed on R.A., not with anger, but with a heavy sadness. After hours of argument, the judge delivered his ruling. "This court recognizes that a life was lost," he said solemnly, "and nothing can undo that pain. However, the law also recognizes that the accused was operating under a genuine conflict of rights. Her constitutional freedom of religion against her professional obligation to save a patient." The room grew still. Dr. R.A. is not entirely at fault. The judge continued. "This tragedy is a failure of systems that placed a single doctor in a position where ethical guidance was absent. Hospitals must create structures that prevent personal beliefs from becoming the sole deciding factor in emergency care." Some people in the courtroom gasped. Others shook their heads. The judge looked directly at R.A. "You are free from criminal liability," he said gently. "But freedom from punishment does not always mean freedom from consequences." His words echoed deeply inside her heart, because even though the court released her, her conscience did not. Neighbors whispered when she stepped outside. Friends stopped calling. Even members of her religious group avoided discussing the incident, as if her name had become a shadow no one wanted to touch. At first, Dr. R.A. remained strong. She told herself that she stood firm for her faith, that obedience was greater than public opinion. But at night, when the house grew quiet, she remembered the man who she failed to save. She began to wonder about him and how his family felt when they heard that he could have survived. Dr. R.A. remembered how her pregnant sister died years ago because her family refused to authorize an emergency blood transfusion. She suffered some complications that needed surgery, which led to loss of blood. The doctors pleaded that night, telling the family that a simple transfusion could have saved both the child and the mother, but their fate seemed to be more stronger than their fear. Dr. R.A. remembers standing beside her sister's hospital bed, watching her lips grow pale as life slowly slipped away. She remembered the sound of her mother's cries when the machines went silent. That was the day she promised herself that she would never betray her beliefs, no matter how painful the consequences might be. Years later, that promise had followed her into her own profession, shaping every decision she made. Even now, as the world judged her, she clung to that memory, telling herself that she had done what was right. Yet, something inside her heart felt heavy, like a question that she had refused to answer. Months passed, and life slowly tried to return to normal. Then, one evening, tragedy knocked at her door in a way that she never imagined possible. Her only child, Dara, a bright little girl who filled the house with so much laughter, suddenly collapsed at home. At first, R.A. thought it was exhaustion, but the test revealed that she had a rare genetic disorder that slowly attacked her blood cells. R.A. carried her daughter from one hospital to another, begging for answers. She met several doctors like herself, who revealed to her that her daughter's condition had no cure. She stood there helpless as she watched her daughter cry out in extreme pain. R.A. had never imagined a day like this in her life. Her husband left her years ago after R.A. tried to justify the reason why she allowed her sister to die. He could not understand how a woman would be so heartless and irrational. In fact, he put himself in her sister's shoes, saying that R.A. would rather watch him die than go against her fate. And this reason was why he ended things with her. However, R.A. was already pregnant when he left. She gave birth to her daughter shortly afterwards and never had a reason to take her to the hospital. DRA was such a healthy child until now that the doctors could not even explain how quickly her condition had worsened. The hospital became Ra's new home as machines beeped softly as she sat beside her daughter's bed, watching her small chest rise and fall with effort. DRA tried to smile through her pain, asking her mother if she would be able to go back to school. RA forced a smile on her face, but inside her heart was breaking into pieces that she could not put back together. She called all her doctor friends trying to get a second opinion on the condition, but all the doctors had the same thing to say, that her daughter's condition had no cure. RA began to do some research on the condition. She spent her days searching the internet for people who had a similar condition. She even reached out to a few families who she saw on social media, whose relatives suffered from the same ailment years ago, but none of them were able to cure the ailment. However, one of the women informed her that she knew of a doctor who was so close to finding a cure. She gave RA details on how to find the doctor, and RA could not contain her joy. For the first time since her daughter fell sick, RA felt a glimmer of hope. She went out in search of the man, who everyone referred to as Dr. Aji. RA arrived at his hospital and met a nurse who revealed that Dr. Aji had just stepped out for a meeting. She asked to know when he would return, and the woman revealed to her that he would return in a few hours. RA decided to wait for him, hoping that seeing him would be the miracle that she had prayed for. So she sat quietly in the reception, her fingers trembling as she clutched DRA's medical file to her chest. Every minute felt like an hour as nurses walked past her, whispering gently to each other. But RA heard nothing. All she could think about was her daughter's fragile smile and the way her small hands searched for hers whenever pain came. After some time, a middle-aged woman walked slowly into the hospital lobby. Her face carried a quiet sadness that RA could not explain. The woman stopped abruptly when she saw RA sitting there. Her eyes met as the woman seemed to recognize who she was. "You," the man whispered, her voice shaking as RA stood up politely and revealed to her that she was there to see Dr. Aji. "My daughter is very sick, and I was told that Dr. Aji is currently working on a cure that can save my daughter's life. You are Dr. RA, right? Aren't you?" she asked softly as RA nodded her head slowly, confused. The woman then took a deep breath, one that seemed to carry years of pain. "Dr. Aji is my brother," she said as she revealed to RA that truly her brother was working on a cure. However, something happened that she believes that Dr. Aji would be in the best position to explain. RA sat there terrified as she wondered what could have happened. She sat there for a few hours as Dr. Aji arrived at the hospital and met with her. RA introduced herself to him, and Dr. Aji revealed to her that he knew who she was. RA did not waste time as she asked about the cure that he was developing. Dr. Aji looked her in the eyes and revealed that the cure was no longer feasible. He invited her into his office as he explained to her that his research partner, who was in charge of the last phase of the research, died without writing down the final stages of the cure. He kept it in his head to avoid theft, as so many people have tried to steal the formula from us. He revealed that they agreed to do it this way after their lab was vandalized and some part of their research stolen by people who they believed wanted to sell the cure to a huge pharmaceutical company abroad. Dr. Aji sat across from her, his eyes heavy with exhaustion that years of research had carved into his face. He folded his hand slowly and told her that the man who died was not just any researcher. He was the only person who understood how to stabilize the cure inside the human body. Without him, the cure was like a dog without a key. RA felt her chest tighten, but she still held on to hope, asking if there was any other way to continue the work. Dr. Aji shook his head slowly. He explained that the last phase of the cure required a rare biological response that only his partner had discovered. They had planned to meet the day after he died, but instead he received a call a night before that his partner had fallen from a building and was rushed to a hospital. RA listened quietly, unaware that every word was slowly pulling her closer to a truth that she no longer wanted to hear. "The hospital called me too late," Dr. Aji continued softly. "They said he died because a doctor refused to approve of his blood transfusion," he said as he looked her in the eyes. His voice broke as Ra's fingers tightened around the medical file that she was holding. Dr. Aji leaned back and revealed that his partner carried a rare antibody pattern in his blood that activated the cure. He was not just a scientist. He was also a part of the experiment itself. The cure was dependent on a protein that only existed in his body. When he died, the last living sample expired with him. RA felt a strange chill run down her body. She remembered the unconscious man she had treated months ago, the one who needed blood. Her heart began to beat faster as she asked Dr. Aji the name of his partner. Dr. Aji hesitated as he revealed to her that his name was Dr. Adi. The room suddenly fell silent as Ra's breathing began to grow shallow. Memories came rushing back. The beeping monitor, the nurse's desperate voice, and the long haunting sound that lingered in the ward when the man finally died. Her hands began to shake as she realized that the man who she refused to save was the very person standing between her daughter and death. Dr. Aji watched her carefully as realization spread across her face like a shadow. He did not need to ask because he had already read about the incident online and knew that R.A. was behind his partner's death. The silence between them felt heavy as R.A. felt a pain in her heart that was suffocating. "I didn't know," R.A. whispered, her voice trembling. "I thought I was standing for my fate," she said to the man who looked at her but said nothing. Tears filled her eyes as guilt wrapped around her like chains. She remembered how she had sat in her office, convinced that she was doing the right thing, while a life slipped away just a few doors from her. Dr. Aji closed his eyes briefly. "My partner believed that doctors should always choose life," he said quietly. "He used to say that fate without compassion becomes a weapon." His words pierced through Ra's heart, breaking something inside her that she had held tightly for years. R.A. fell to her knees beside the chair, unable to hold herself together anymore. She thought of D.R.A. lying in the hospital bed, waiting for a miracle that had died months ago under her watch. Every decision she had made suddenly felt heavier than before. Dr. Aji's sister stood at the door, watching silently. She was the same woman R.A. met in the reception. Her eyes were filled with pain, but also a strange calm. "My brother lost more than a partner," she said softly. "He lost his closest friend and also my husband." The words hit R.A. like a storm. She lifted her head slowly, realizing that the woman standing before her was the widow of the man she refused to save. The weight of that truth settled heavily in the room, leaving R.A. speechless. "I came here today thinking your brother would save my child," R.A. said weakly, her voice breaking. "But I didn't know that was the reason the cure died." Tears rolled down her face as she struggled to breathe through the guilt that now filled her chest. Dr. Audi remained quiet for a very long moment before he decided to speak. He told her that although the cure could not be completed, there are still ways to make DRA comfortable. It will not be a miracle, but it will be love. The kind of care that holds a person gently even when life feels unfair. Raid to the hospital that evening, her steps slow and heavy. She sat beside her daughter's bed, holding her small hand as the machines hummed softly around them. For the first time in her life, she questioned everything she believed, without fear of the answer. DRA looked up at her mother as she smiled weakly and asked why she was crying. "Mommy, why are you crying?" she asked softly as RA wiped her tears gently and forced a smile. RA tried so hard to hide the sadness, but her daughter was too smart to be deceived. She told her mother that nothing will happen to her, and although RA wanted to believe this, she knew better that her daughter's condition was not improving. That night, she prayed in a way that she had never prayed before. She did not ask for miracles. She only asked for forgiveness, for the man she refused to save, for his family, and for the child lying before her, whose future had been tied to a decision she could never undo. Days turned into weeks, and Dara's condition slowly began to worsen. There was no cure, and RA could not stand the thought of anything happening to her daughter. She sat there helpless as she received an unexpected visit from the wife of the man who she refused to save. RA was so shocked to see her. She pleaded for her forgiveness again, but the young woman revealed to her that her late husband appeared to her in the dream and revealed that he should give her a small diary that he had kept hidden for months. Inside was the complete steps on how to create the cure. The woman also revealed to her that her husband revealed that his son's blood can also be used to prepare the cure. RA could not believe her eyes. She thanked the woman repeatedly as she apologized to her again for her role in her husband's death. The woman broke down in tears as she revealed to RA that her husband suffered from an asthma attack when he went to inspect their building project. "We'd be on the phone together. When his asthma began, I warned him not to go alone that night, but he refused, saying that he needed to see the work that had been done before he travels the next morning." RA listened quietly as tears poured down her eyes. The widow wiped her face gently as she continued to speak. "They told me he fell from the second floor. However, what broke me was knowing that he survived the fall, that he was still breathing. When they took him to the hospital, he had the chance to leave. If only you acted appropriately at the time." The room fell into a heavy silence as RA felt the air leave her lungs. Every memory of that night returned. The nurse's plea, the sound of the monitor, and the quiet decision she had made without knowing whose life she held in her hands. "I am not here to fight you," the widow said softly. "I came because my husband insisted that I do. He loves saving lives and believed that his work can help save the life of your beautiful daughter." R.A. broke down in tears as she held the diary tightly to her chest. "I don't deserve your kindness," she whispered as the woman shook her head gently and replied, "This is not kindness, it's closure," she said as she left the hospital, leaving R.A. in complete shock. That night, R.A. rushed to Dr. Aji with the diary. His hands trembled as he flipped through the pages filled with formulas, sketches, and careful notes written in Dr. Admi's handwriting. For the first time in months, a small light returned to his tired eyes. "It might work," he whispered as Dr. Aji and his team began to work day and night, guided by the diary, and the Rebbe logical match from Dr. Admiral R.A. watched silently from the corner, feeling both hope and fear rise inside her like waves that she could not control. Days later, and the moment finally arrived, DRA laid peacefully on the bed as the doctor administered the treatment on her. R.A. held her tiny hands as she whispered some prayers, pleading with God for the cure to work. The machines beeped softly as the medicine was inserted into her body. Minutes passed, then hours, and R.A. could barely blink, her heart pounding as she stared at the money to attach to her daughter. Things were finally getting better as Dar's breathing began to steady. Signs of improvement began to show as her daughter finally got the second chance that she deserved. One born out of sacrifice, forgiveness, and the life of a man who she had once failed to save. R.A. could not stop the tears that rolled down her face. But this time they were not just tears of guilt. They were tears of relief, mixed with a pain that would never fully leave her heart. She learned a very valuable lesson that although the law may set you free, only compassion can heal the part of your heart that still feels guilty. Because faith without love can hurt, but faith guided by mercy can save more lives than medicine alone. The lesson to be learned from this story is that we should never let beliefs become a wall that blocks kindness.